Hey, it's Ryan with QLZ. We have a guy on who I have played his music over the last probably 4 or 5 years. He is a one-man band. He's got an incredible story behind him. It's Dave Perry from again, the one-man band Fear of Water. I don't know if people intro you, Dave, as the one-man band or what they do.
I mean, it is a factually accurate statement, so
Yes.
I accept that. And the thing is that in this industry, a lot of bands either intentionally or unintentionally end up sounding like each other. Even if you just go on Spotify and like look up like Nonpoint, and then look up related artists at the bottom, and it has that row of artists with their like
Yep.
circle band picture. If you remove the band names from underneath those, the majority of those are like indistinguishable from each other. Anyways, the point is that like I like having some points of differentiation. If I'm going to be intentional about like entering this arena and wanting to be professional and separate myself from the herd, but also still be, a congruent part of the genre and the community, like it's important that my points of differentiation are known. And I do think that being a one-man band is like a pretty important delineator between me and the average band that you hear on the radio. So yes, happy to have an intro like that. Thank you. And good to be here.
Great. I'm glad you're here, man. This worked out because of Facebook. Essentially, we got kind of involved in a conversation on Facebook, and we've been talking about that a little bit. But dude, like
the industry is a small world.
Yeah.
I'll say that, and it benefits people to play nice. I'll say that.
Yeah, we talked about just we don't have to go into all the details on it. I mean, if you're watching this, you might know what we're talking about if you're in on this. But like you were talking about the idea, the wild idea of just being a good person in this industry and where it can lead you and what you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, like there's certain elements that if you talk to any successful band, there's some core tenets that they will break back down to you in terms of like how they've reached this level of success. And maybe the top one is always going to be like luck, chaos, right place, right time. Someone that we knew someone, and we just happened to play the right show at like a lot of that is big. And then also talent is obviously a big part of it. But then there's this enormous, maybe even more than 50% part of it that's like being a decent human and a functional adult, because this is a business and you have to run that business and coexist with your other business partners, whether you're co-owners or you're all working for one person or whatever. And I mean, that's so critical. The amount of like fruit that has died on the vine, as they say, like good bands that never saw the light of day or never got past one album because of, a litany of things, including substance abuse and ego and people that just can't find that balance of like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and then all of the actual hard work that goes into doing this is really unfortunate. So yeah, you and I have both seen countless examples of that being the case in a good way. Like you interview someone, you're like, oh man, like I love the music, and then you talk to them like, oh, you're actually like a decent human that's also like gone through some stuff and learned hard lessons, and you apply that to your career now. And then there's other people who do not learn those lessons, and it blows up in their face.
Yeah, it's interesting. Or you see, I'm pretty fortunate in my case, I think with rock and metal. Like I've interviewed a lot of people that are great. I get to interview a lot of up and coming acts as well. We're doing things like the Art Spotlight, the new On Q show, which you're on with Systemic. The track that we've got on there.
Which I appreciate it. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I don't know if you ever met Miles Kennedy of Alter Bridge. Miles might be like the most pleasant human I've ever met in this industry. Like he's incredible. And I tell people this, I'm like, it's no bullshit. Like Miles might be the most just pleasant human being, if not of all time, at least in rock and metal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then him being in Alter Bridge with a guitar legend who's also one of the nicest, most humble guys that you'll ever meet. Mark Tremonti is just such a
awesome dude. Awesome.
Incredibly grounded human who we're going to be talking about. Our kids are going to be talking about Tremonti in the way that you and I would talk about like Page and Plant and Hendrix and stuff. Like true innovator and absolute badass, but also zero ego and super decent human. So yeah, man, that's a wonderful combo. And it's also just, it's part of the equation for having a longevity. If you want to do this as a career for multiple years or multiple decades, like you can't be an asshole. You just can't.
No, it's the same thing in our industry. Because eventually people get tired of you. It's like, you can refuse to learn things for the longest time. I've seen it. I've worked with people like that. The ego comes in, you refuse to learn things, you treat people like shit. And eventually it winds up and it goes away. Now you've had the chance to work with some incredible people. I know, like we played your track with Elias. I've interviewed awesome dude.
Super nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah, love him. You've got Aaron right now in the song Systemic. And whenever we have somebody on, especially when it's a track that we're spinning or we're going to spin, the art spotlight, whatever else, what do you want to share about Systemic, I guess, and working with Aaron on this track overall?
Yeah, I mean, so both those guys, like Elias from Nonpoint and Aaron from Gemini Syndrome, tremendous collaborators. And I mean that in the truest sense. Like, so the song itself is a collaboration, but there really is this spectrum that can be run when you have a collaborator come on, especially someone who's like established and busy. Maybe they're even in multiple projects. Maybe they're in the middle of a tour. And so, you know, the one step above saying no to the collaboration is saying yes, but I'm going to, you know, it's going to be clinical. Like, you send me the finished song in terms of like me, Dave, singing all the parts, and then give me specific timestamps of like, okay, you are the second verse, which starts at the 1 minute mark and goes to 1:45. And then you are the chorus, call and response and the harmony here. And you do this part. Like, give me an instruction manual. I'm going to do that exact thing. I'm going to give you 2 takes, and then I'm going to wash my hands of it, and the end. No one, and they would be totally in the right to do that. I mean, that's technically what the request is. I've been very fortunate with all 6 of my collaborations so far that every single person I've worked with has been like a creative partner in it and has wanted to know like the origin of the song and has wanted to explore different like melodic or tonal or emotional qualities that maybe I have not represented yet. You know, someone like Aaron, who has like a you know, virtuoso level understanding of music theory, he was able to come to the table for my, and I'm using air quotes, finished song, and do things to it that I not only didn't consider, but when I first heard it, I was like, what song are you listening to, bro? Like, this isn't what I asked you to do. Cause he like changed the key of the verse and it gave it this whole different like emotional feeling to it. And it also worked way better for his voice, which is specifically what I wanted. And after listening it to like 2 or 3 times, like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly, you know, what I want to bring people like him into the fold with. Or like with Elias from Nonpoint, he probably sent, my engineer was, you know, he appreciated the effort, but also like, you're giving me so much work. He sent a folder with like 150 takes of like, all right, here's 5 different versions ranging from like soft and gentle to, you know, bullet with a name on it level aggressive. And here's an octave lower, here's an octave higher, here's 3 different harmony parts. I wrote you know, I spit bars in the bridge, which wasn't in the original. Here's 4 different versions of that. And then if you need any of this redone, just let me know. I was like, dude, that is quintessential going above and beyond. And that's just from a professional standpoint. Then there's also 16-year-old Dave from the past sitting in his high school parking lot in his 1997 Oldsmobile Achieva blasting Nonpoint's first album. And if I got in a time machine and told 16-year-old Dave that 36-year-old Dave would be working with Elias, he would tell you that you're full of shit and you should get out of my 1997 Oldsmobile Achieva. It's an honor. Also working with, I mean, all of these people. So I've people from Butcher Babies, Nonpoint, Gemini Syndrome, Raw, and Seven Dust is like, that's an enormous part of my childhood. So to be able to be at this point now in my career where I'm like collaboratively making art that I'm incredibly proud of with those people, and they're doing me the huge service and favor of integrating me into their loyal fan bases, has been a real treat. Like, I feel very very fortunate. And it's especially this first crop of collaborators have really helped me build the momentum that is opening up doors for this whole next wave of collaborators that you guys are going to be hearing. Because in the first wave, it's like, you don't know me, you don't owe me anything. I don't have a label that's using their leverage. I don't have a manager that's like pulling favors. I don't have a giant duffel bag of cash that I'm just like waving in front of people. So at the end of the day, it's just like, you need to bring it full circle to what we were talking about before. You basically need to like me as a person, and the music needs to stand on its own as something that you, Elias, want to attach your name to in perpetuity forever. But now, because of these awesome artists that have worked with me, I now have quantifiable metrics in terms of like, the song with Elias just hit 500,000 streams earlier this week. That song hit number 10 on the SMR top 50. The song with Aaron just hit number 18 on the SMR top 50 yesterday. And, you know, just seeing it up there with bands like Metallica and Foo Fighters and Five Finger Death Punch and Stained and Seven Dust is like, and then this guy that you probably have never heard of making music out of his bedroom in Austin, Texas is It's amazing for me, and it also gives me faith in for the kids out there now that are like, I don't even know, like, I feel so demoralized by even thinking about trying to get into the music industry because it's so, the gap between like independent artist and
Yeah.
signed artists with all of the power of a management company and a publicist and a label and the other artists that are backing you up there and radio stations that have established relationships with the label. It's just like it's a huge uphill battle for someone like me in my position to get to the point of where I'm sitting here talking to you about this, and I
Yeah.
have these songs that exist that are out in the ether, and I've formed these relationships with these bands and these artists that I really, really respect and love and appreciate. And it's very fulfilling. It's just very exhausting, especially as a one-man band and doing it by myself.
No, I'm with you. I mean, to see where you've come, because I know your cover of DMX, X Gonna Give It to You, is also on. It's on my workout playlist as well.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
hard hitting track, which is cool. Now we're seeing DMX actually coming into rock radio with Five Finger Death Punch. You mentioned Five Finger. It's interesting. Yeah. And again, I'm glad we talked about being a good human being, because look, you're a great example. You were also born clinically deaf, so like from where you have. And you mentioned how humbling the journey is and how much of an honor it is. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I'd love for you to tell me like when you got your hearing back and kind of what you did for it. But I know that's another uphill battle that you have taken to be successful. So when people are like, oh, the industry's keeping me down, or it's doing this, or it's doing that, like you've gone over multiple hurdles to get to where you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the core lessons that I've learned throughout certainly through my musical journey, but also my entire life, starting with being born clinically deaf, which I'll elaborate on shortly, is that you have to learn from dead ends and potholes and barricades and red tape and all this stuff. You have to learn from it, put it on your map, and then figure out the alternate route while keeping with you the knowledge that you learned from that dead end. A lot of people get overwhelmed and give up, or a lot of people stay at that dead end and then use it as like a crutch to hold a grudge against. It's the whole universe is against me. And the amount of dead ends that I've hit and opportunities that slip through my fingers, and just like the list of basically failures or just net neutral things where I feel like I've just plateaued and coasted for years that I've gone through to get to the point of you and I sitting here talking about my career is astronomical. It would take me hours to sit down and just like bullet point them out. But it's really important that for each of those, as demoralizing, as defeating as those can be, is like you pick yourself back up, you be like, cool, don't do that again. Or next time the scenario comes up, like approach it this way. It also teaches you to like get more and more outside of your comfort zone. Like you're either going to go into, curl into a ball to protect yourself from the, scary world out there, or you're going to think of, it's like the movie Castaway where Tom Hanks has built that crappy raft and he's trying to get off of the island by going out, and then he keeps getting hit by in the waves, and he gets hit by the coral reef, and his thing pops. He could have given up and just died on the island, but he's like, no, I gotta. Yeah, he lost Wilson. Don't even bring it up, man. I'm gonna start crying.
My bad.
Like that's dude. Even when that movie comes on like TNT and it's like 5 hours long because of the commercial breaks or whatever, and it takes you out of the emotional, I'll still watch it and I'll still get to the Wilson scene. Like, man, I just wish the volleyball was still there.
I know.
That's he's an American treasure. Anyone who doesn't like Tom Hanks needs to get out. I think. Anyways, so being born clinically deaf was definitely the beginning of an enormous uphill battle. I think it helps that like I would have much rather been in the position that I was from birth, as opposed to, being, serving overseas, or being in a construction accident, or, going to too many live shows and having my ears damaged or something. I think that would be so much more difficult, so much more demoralizing to have had a fully functional sense of hearing and then have it taken away. So I was born at a point where basically had perpetual overlapping double ear infections that infection was spreading. This is like fresh out the womb, so I have a very minimalized immune system. Doctors aren't even really sure right off the bat like what's wrong with you, because that's an internal thing that doesn't have a lot of like physical external symptoms. And if I'm not responding to audio stimuli, they think like maybe he's actually fully deaf, as opposed to like experiencing infections that are impairing my ability to hear. And they want to use, it's difficult to find like really effective medication that's like kicks the ass of the infection, but is gentle enough for a fresh human with very minimal. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, there was a lot of that type of walking that line of like, how aggressive can we be with the disease while not hurting the kid? And to that point, there was a medication that I was taking at the time. This was in the 80s, but like it was FDA approved at the time. But then after like a long period of time, the side effects started to it wasn't outweighing the positives, but there started being more and more examples of like it deteriorating the like cartilage, like your spinal discs, and like it was deteriorating, it was attacking other stuff in the body in the process of doing what I needed to be attacked inside of my ear canal. And I think about that and it's like I would still take that risk today. I would rather be in a wheelchair and have fully functional hearing than be able-bodied and deaf, because music has been such a gift to me. But yeah, so just years and years and years of surgeries and hardcore medications, and then many years of speech therapy, and music was an enormous part of unlocking. I don't mean that like in the ether. I mean like literally cognitively unlocking neural pathways, and helping by basically investing myself in a relationship with music. It helped me cognitively advance in the rest of my life, because I wasn't really fluently speaking and communicating until I was 6, and I had to play catch up with all of these other kids that had 6 years of learning shapes and colors and writing their name and reading an analog clock and tying their shoes. And so it has made me very intentional about the noise that I make and the noise that I don't make, whether that be talking, listening, making music, supporting other artists, using my platform to say certain things, and then making selective decisions about what I don't. It has given me a great deal of appreciation I'm very grateful for our ability to sit here and talk right now. I'm very grateful for a lifetime full of music and what lies ahead. I'll never take that for granted. And if I ever see someone at a show without any level of hearing protection, I will slap them and then give them a pair of earplugs. Wear ear protection at shows.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that. So you can stop me. Yeah, I know. I need to get better at it, because it's like it's one of those things I go and I'm like, okay, and then I was like, oh crap, I forgot to buy stuff again. Like we had a couple people when I was living, I told you, up in Wisconsin. We bonded a lot over Wisconsin stuff as well before we got going. There was a guy that always brought like earplugs, and I'm like, oh okay. And then I moved, and I was like, oh that's right, my buddy that's also the earplug guy is not here anymore, so I need to.
Yeah, man. You got to be the earplug guy. Yeah.
I got to be the earplug guy now. I got to take responsibility for myself. We talked about being responsible adults. I just need to get.
But seriously, it doesn't come back. Like I was lucky that my hearing impairment was because of disease and not because of actual damage to the structures of the eardrum and the fibers in the ear canal that basically help you translate sound. But going to loud shows and not protecting your hearing is the perfect way to take away such a precious gift that we all take for granted. So
yeah, I'd lose my job if I couldn't hear it. So
yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, oh yeah, here's this song by so-and-so. I can't tell you what it sounds like because I don't know.
It's a really great movie called The Sound of Metal that came out a few years ago. I think it was even nominated for Best Picture, about this guy's journey as a musician, losing his hearing, and how it just absolutely destroys his life. And the movie does a really phenomenal job of like, I don't even know how I would describe it to you, short of this is a oversimplified, but just like things do sound like they're underwater as you're in this in-between phase of like losing and gaining hearing functionality. And this movie does a really phenomenal job of artistically depicting what it sounds like and also feels like. There's something claustrophobic about that, about feeling like you're not even right now as I'm talking, I'm hearing myself and you through these headphones, but I also my voice is also bouncing off the wall behind me, and you start like losing all of that sensory stuff, and you start to just kind of hear stuff inside of your skull, and it has like a closing in type feeling. Just wear earplugs, man. Like it's it's such an easy fix to a life altering problem. So wear earplugs, do it, and you should hand them out at the door. Like it's just
Yeah, we got a lot of good PSAs here as well. I know you mentioned you've got stuff with Rock coming up, as well as members of Seven Dust on these tracks. Yes. Do you want to put these all on an album? I'm a big album guy still. I still like listening to a CD from start to finish.
Sure, me too.
What do you want to do with this collection of music you got out here?
I'm because I'm doing this by myself. I'm constantly walking this fine line of like what I want to do as a music fan, and then what is more realistic as a business-minded artist. So like before we started recording, I was really excited to hear that at a previous radio station that you were at, you guys were playing my stuff well before I was doing these collaborations. And to be honest, these collaborations have been a phenomenal foot in the door to be like, okay, program director XYZ has never heard of Fear of Water, but I've heard of Elias, you know, I've heard of Nonpoint, I've heard of Seven Dust, I've heard of Raw, I've heard of Butcher Babies, I've heard of El Nino. And then, but that, you know, that still only gets them to just even open up the email and listen to the song once. To see these SMR charts, and to see all of these like radio stations releasing their, you know, their filthy 15s and their top 10s and all that stuff, and to see my music regularly on there alongside with some of my favorite artists and artists that I grew up with is, it means the world to me to have radio stations and their fans supporting what I'm doing is yeah, man, it's tremendous. But anyways, the amount of effort that goes in as an independent artist who's not getting paid to do this, who at that time certainly was not in a position to go tour on this, like what goes into releasing an album is absolutely exhausting, like emotionally, physically, logistically, financially. And we're just in that age of streaming and shorter attention spans. And also so anyways, the short answer is that like I plan for the foreseeable future to just do singles.
Okay.
And every single will be with a featured artist. I would love to get back to the point where I have the resources and the kind of power behind me to release an album that has like a thematic tie through. And also a big part of it too is like, as part of my, for me, what I'm doing with Fear of Water is networking. And a lot of that has to do with like what you and I are doing right now and the collaborators that I work with, but it's also the beginning of the process. I'm trying to work with as many engineers and producers that I have a great deal of love and respect for, certainly for the artists and work that they've put out. And typically when you do an album, it should be all produced, recorded, and mastered by like the same team. And I'm benefiting from doing 2 songs here and 4 songs here and 3 songs here, like having the flexibility to be able to work with different engineers, different producers, different mastering artists, and also working with different collaborators. It's just given me this opportunity to explore broader creative horizons instead of being like, okay, this is an album, so it has to be, that doesn't have to be, but like albums typically have like this kind of theme or this sonic thread that goes through all of them, that I don't want to stray too far from. So by doing singles, it allows me to explore a lot more space without it being like too inconsistent. I want everything to sound like Fear of Water, but I also don't want to be put in too much of a box, if that makes sense.
No, exactly. And like I said, I like asking this question because everybody's got a different path to go about it because of how the industry is with singles, and it's, you know, it's again attention spans and whatnot. I know you got a actual work call to get onto here in,
no,
in
but
a little bit.
I got at least another 7 minutes.
All right, perfect. Because I know I got a couple other questions for you.
Okay,
I know I want to ask you about Heidi. Working with Heidi from the Butcher Babies, because this track with her is unlike anything I have ever heard her do. So kind of
it's a
how
great
did this come
segue
together?
from what we were just talking about in terms of like not being put in too much of a box. And I was guilty of that towards her. Like when I had that song relatively finished and I was thinking about female collaborators to help bring this song one day to like its full potential. I love Butcher Babies and I love Heidi, both as a person that I've had the opportunity to interact with and also as a band. And as a front woman, she's just this like, she's a tiny
she's
human, but
up there. Yeah,
she's ferocious. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I just, she like barely was even on the list of potential collaborators because I struggled to imagine her giving the performance that she ended up doing, which if, you know, for anyone listening, I hope you go, hear it on the radio or go,
we'll link the song in the I'll link the song.
Awesome.
I'll grab the YouTube. When we do the blog post on our website, I'll make sure that it's in there for people to check out. So all the 3 songs that we've either played from you or that one, we'll make sure all those are in there. So.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, she gives such an unbelievably vulnerable and emotionally raw performance that is so outside of what we as Butcher Baby fans are used to from her. And she absolutely nails it. And I'm so grateful for her bringing her talents and her emotion and her passion into this song to help it realize its full potential. Yeah, she absolutely just crushes it. And it's just not what you would ever expect to hear her do. It's really beautiful. I'm incredibly proud of it. Yeah.
It's a great way to work it. It's a beautiful song. Because I'm listening and it's like, I try to go in with an open mind for whenever band releases something, going with open mind. But there's also that part of me that's like, okay, where's the song going? Where's the song going? When is she going to get like And I'm like, oh,
When she
and I
gonna rip
remember
your
running
face
that
off,
back,
yeah.
and I'm like, wow. I said, I'm just blown away because this is total. I'd never expected this, but I also love that at the same time, being a fan of music, a fan of rock, and a fan of metal, is when those curveballs kind of come at you, and somebody can show a side of them that you don't know that really either that they had, or it's not something they've shown a lot before. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
She is quintessentially that in this scenario. She absolutely nails it. And again, wonderful collaborator, super
Mhm.
involved creatively, and has been such a champion of the song after the fact in terms of regularly promoting it. And she, the amount of times that she's just out of nowhere has texted me and been like, thank you so much for having me
Yeah.
on something that means so much to you, is amazing.
And I love it. Like, you get to share these positive stories about these people that we know, and they're
Yeah.
reaching out to you to say it. I think that's always good stuff to share, so people can hear and be like, yeah, there's more positivity than negative bullshit out there. So, Dave,
Yeah.
I ask this question to everybody, especially when they come on for the first time, because it's fun. I used to be a blog post when I was up in Wisconsin. Your
Okay.
favorite, and we talked about albums, and you're talking about listening
Sure.
to
Yeah.
Nonpoint's debut record in your 1997. 1997? What was it again?
What's that?
Your high school vehicle, the
Oh,
1997.
1997 Oldsmobile Achieva. Yeah.
There we go.
97. Yeah. Great year.
Great year, great year. I think my first vehicle was 93. So, eventually upgrade a little bit. Eventually upgrade a
Nice.
little bit after that. Your
Nice.
favorite complete albums of all time, man, because I think again, you got a bunch of music, and I think, those
Favorite
complete albums,
you saying from like from a different artist?
or just your overall favorite complete albums, your favorite no skip records. Doesn't
Oh,
matter
no
who it
skip
is,
records.
doesn't matter what genre it is. Yeah.
Verses by Pearl Jam is an
Okay.
absolute front to back banger. Pretty Hate Machine, and No Teeth, or sorry, With Teeth by Nine Inch Nails. Nevermind by Nirvana. Black Album by Metallica. So many. The Darkest Days by Stabbing Westward. Uh, Anything that Periphery does, like
Okay.
it's hard to say a favorite, man, like but I'm it's amazing when a band can achieve that it's like an album that I will never touch, skip
Mhm.
on, and I want to start it from the beginning and go to the back,
Yeah.
to the back. Like, I love that.
Awesome. Dave, where can everybody follow you? Socials, all that good stuff. So when you have more collaborations coming out, music
Yes.
videos, or whatever else you're putting
Yep.
together, where can everybody
A
follow you,
lot
man?
more, music, a lot more collaborations with great artists, and a lot more really cool music videos to support those. And you can find those at Fear of Water on Facebook, at Fear of Water on Instagram, and at Fear of Water on YouTube. And then you can find a lot of music well before these collaborations.
Yeah.
Instrumentals, cover songs, originals, anywhere that you stream and download music.
Awesome. Dave, again, man, we got Systemic on new on Q. You can hear it again this Saturday night. Dude, appreciate the time,
Awesome.
man.
I really appreciate the support and the conversation, man.